I think before I can answer this question, I'd like to go back into how much the sector contributes to Europe, because the European branded clothing sector, it generates both significant economic and cultural value. So it's also, win-win situation. Just to float you a bit with numbers, is that represent around 300 billion euros contributing to the EU GDP. That's around 4.5 million jobs that is supported by the sector. A bit more than 1.3 million direct jobs, mainly for women, and contributing for the livelihood of city centre through retail activities, logistics, and so on. So beyond economic, it's also cultural, whereby we also play an essential role for cultural identity and self-expression. So we contribute a lot to Europe, and we believe it still contributes to growth opportunity because Europe remains one of the world's most integrated and dynamic market for branded apparel, both in terms of sustainability, innovation, and creativity. And we really would like to make it happen, to make it continue. Maybe I start with presenting who I am and what Ebca does, and that will also bring into answering the level playing field. So the European Branded Clothing Association represents and gathers global brands among 75 global brands that operate on the EU market. And we have the same views, that the same direction of travel that is supported strong sustainability, and Ebca members have strong sustainability track records. So for us, it's quite important that a level playing field is essential, and we're really pushing that to the fact that all economic operators, regardless of their business model, their origin, or their size, must comply with EU regulation. That says, we were really happy to see the European Commission communication on e-commerce that was highlighting some measures to level this playing field, and in particular, the measures aim at strengthening the custom enforcement to ensure that all products that are entering the EU market are compliant, safe, and aligned with forthcoming eco-design requirement. So in short, yes, level playing field was of the most essential key ask that we have within Ebca. What the branded clothing sector needs is definitely coherent and effective regulation. So what matters really is that EU legislation remains consistent and predictable. We believe that the European Commission has the opportunity to make this shift towards consistent and effective regulation, because we are under strong scrutiny by the European institutions. To put some example, I think one of the key issue is the fact that data and information requirements should be consistent. We need to support informed consumer choice. We need to support strong sustainability ambition, while also preserving the competitiveness of the sector and helping companies with compliance with easy implementable tools and enforceable measures. Well, I think you're right to point out that the textile sector is extremely fragmented and interdependent. It's important that the regulators understand this fragmentation and the complex nature of the supply chain, because we're global, we're complex, we're fragmented. Ebca represents 75 global brands that work with small and medium enterprise across Europe and globally. So that helps us on having a clear understanding of the challenge that small and medium enterprise faces as the industry becomes regulated. So concretely, that means that EU regulation needs to allow sufficient lead time for implementation, consistent information requirements to avoid unnecessary burden and administrative work for suppliers, while ensuring that the the information requirement remain enable compliance and serve the greater purposes. Ebca represents all global brands, so it's Ebca members are placing product on the EU market and operating in the EU with a strong record on sustainability. So it doesn't matter whether or not they're European or non-European. So the Ebca's membership is broad and global. We have members headquarters in Europe and outside of Europe, and I invite everyone to go on the website. So I think, as I mentioned already, I think it's what matters ensuring that the regulation applies to all, regarding the business, regardless of the business model, the size and the origin, because it's important that everyone plays by the same international and EU legislation. And I think what's important as well is that Ebca enables also discussion and a forum whereby all international brands can also help collaborating to ensure that we also support the European legislation towards more sustainable ambition. Yeah, that's what we heard a lot. Indeed, what you mentioned is true that we have newly regulated when it comes to sustainability regulation. However, Ebca was created in 2007 as an informal alliance, and we've already started supporting the European legislation in terms of rule-based international trade. We've been consistently supporting the European institution to ensure that market access to third countries, ensuring that there's no technical and non-technical barrier to trade. So it's not new for Ebca to be engaging at European level. Beside it, I think what's important is that the sector per se and Ebca members have not waited for a European legislation to launch an individual and collective initiative to reduce environmental and social impact. So the sector, broadly speaking, has collectively worked before the European legislation on improving the product performance, the building capacity among their suppliers, work towards reducing its climate impact. So what we can learn from other sector is also how do we ensure that we are being recognized as a sector and not an ecosystem. So really having this sectoral approach would be quite important. And also how do we pass on the knowledge and expertise that we gain through the individual and collective initiative to help policymaking? I think that's the two key points to convey here. Alors, I think there's two key points I want to convey here. One more generally, and it's an ongoing process. Ebca has always been good at ensuring that we're not just about that the clothing sector is not only about fashion and style, but also about economic and social value. I've already mentioned how much we contribute to the European economy through contribution to the GDP, through direct and induced employment, through livelihood and cultural changes. So this is definitely something that has been a key success for Ebca and an ongoing effort, because I think as regulators evolve and change, we need to continue this open dialogue about informing them about what we represent and what we do. I think what we can work on, and that has shown that it works well, is ensuring that we are extremely effective when our input comes early in policy making process, to ensure that the EU rules support competitive sustainability instead of creating an unnecessary burden. One recent example is the fact that we've been extremely supportive of the European Commission to provide detailed opinions regarding notification by member states for specific legislation, because we're really pushing for EU harmonized requirement. And the argument that we provided, along with other EU associations, to push for EU leadership to have EU harmonized requirement on sustainability matter has been echoed in the Commission detailed opinion. hence also be showcasing the necessity to be consistent and providing feedback in a timely manner. Yeah, there has been indeed significant discussions regarding the amendment of the Corporate of Sustainability Reporting Directive and the amendment of the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive. We've been engaging into the discussion because we have consistently called for maintaining EU sustainability ambition, ensuring that that the due diligence is based on a risk approach and a risk framework, so that it's guided by international guidance, OECD principles, in order to ensure that every steps of the supply chains provide feedback and look at their work diligently based on the level of influence and possibility. I think this approach will really help protect workers, ensure that communities in supply chain are also engaged, and also ensuring that smaller suppliers are not overburdened. The discussion in the EU is also trying to find a compromise about, how do we ensure that we engage and we look at our supply chain more diligently, but also simplifying the processes. Our view is really to continue on focusing due diligence in what works and basing the methodology on international guidance and risk-based principle. I don't think there's any legislation that provides concern per se, but what is important is legal certainty. So ensuring that all of the legislation is consistent, harmonized within the harmonized framework at EU level. So that's actually impact driven. If we really want to ensure that we improve the sustainability of all of our products, that we look at a business model more diligently, it's important that we have legislation that drive impact. And that's also what we're looking for EU level approach. That means that there's harmonized requirement, there is consistency between the legislation. So one legislation on waste doesn't ask something that is different than what we would expect in eco-design requirements. That due diligence also take into account other legislation such as forced labor, and reporting is also using the same data that is required for, so that reporting is using the same data as what required for compliance. So that company can put resources into delivering real environmental impact and not navigating overlapping obligations. So I think that's more the necessity to look at consistency and harmonization worse than a specific legislation. We need to be proud of what we deliver. We need to be proud of how much we represent for the sector. So it's really important that we manage to speak in one voice and really looking at having a consistent approach of the ecosystem. It's really ensuring that we avoid fragmentation, because fragmentation weakens a collective impact. And it's really a call for collaboration here. I think relocating supply chain to Europe seems a bit unrealistic. What we would support, on the other hand, is ensuring that we have the enabling environment to push for more cost-effective circular business model. So ensuring that the circularity innovation is actually fit for purpose and can actually compete with a linear model. So what we're looking is how the European Commission and overall the economic operator can invest in adequate recycling infrastructure. How do we have, again, harmonizing rule to avoid market fragmentation, to ensure that products can move from one country to another? How do we ensure access to the tool that allow companies to scale sustainable practices? And such tools are just financial and non-financial incentives, access to information about where to go, what to do, how to find a provider, how to find a supplier. So it's really trying to have this enabling environment and taking the most advantage of the single market. it's a misconception that needs to be reinformed. So just I would like to highlight the fact that the textile supply chain is complex and fragmented, and the high volume of textile production takes place outside of Europe. So as Ebca members have demonstrated a commitment to sustainability throughout the value chain, this is a statement that is also based, that is not necessarily correct. What we believe is that the European legislation can help, level the bar of sustainability to ensure that sustainability is applied by the entire sector and not just the leading few, or the leading part of the sector. This is always a work in progress, because there's always a way to work to do more, but having harmonized rule for eco-design criteria at EU level would definitely improve circular business model, ensuring that all products are placed on the market, whether they produce in Europe or outside of Europe, are subject to the same rules, will help meet the same sustainability requirement. And that's really trying to ensure that we have everyone in the same at the same level.